Load shedding has returned with a vengeance. South Africans have endured 7 consecutive days of power cuts. They haven't even been spared as the country observes Human Rights Day. But what's brought the national power utility, Eskom, to the brink? Bad management, poor planning, corruption, or is it simply the consequence of an evolving democracy? To discuss this, I'm joined by representatives of the country's top political parties. Phindile Mweketsi is from the ANC. Natasha Mazoni represents the DA, and we're expecting Advocate Dalim Mpofu to join us on behalf of the EFF. Good evening to both of you, and thanks very much for coming through. If I may start with you, Phindile, how did we get here from where the ANC sits?
Good evening, Vuyo, and thank you for the invite. How we got here, most of the power plants in South Africa were built in the 1980s. They are around 35 years, 30 years, and it is expected that power plants have to go through a refurbishment program. Unfortunately, this is the time. Most of them are already overdue. Some of them are soon overdue. We cannot apportion this to refurbishment only, but we can say we have seen some angles where the company is faced with challenges that we have seen in the past 2-3 years. So that, coupled with the duration that each station is at now, puts us where we are now.
And you've been in power for 25 years?
35 years.
The ANC?
Oh, the ANC. The ANC has been in power for 25 years. You are correct.
Natasha?
Well, I think it's self-evident. We're in this position because South Africa had a government that allowed Eskom, a monopoly stranglehold company that dominates 95% of South Africa's electricity production, to be sold off piece by piece to the highest bidder in what we now know was a genius but diabolical plan of state capture. The maintenance of our stations were completely ignored because money was being siphoned off to the highest bidder and to soften pockets of certain families. We know that coal was used as a catalyst in this entire endeavour, and the introduction of a bill, an ISMO bill, was stopped because the introduction of private energy producers would have stopped the theft of money from this energy producer, because private companies wouldn't have allowed for this kind of endemic corruption to happen the way it's happened in Eskom over the years. It's classic maladministration, and we, the people of South Africa, are now suffering the consequences.
So you're really talking about what? The past 9 or so years? Because, I mean, that's when the Guptas really had a hold. So are you saying that before then things were fine?
No, I don't think things have been fine for a long time. I think that there's been problems at the entity for at least 20, 25 years. We've seen papers coming out from already 1995 warning us of what could happen if maintenance wasn't executed at our power stations. We've seen experts coming in to give Eskom advice as to how power producers should be introduced and the energy mix should be made. Competition is certainly necessary, and it cannot be that in the year 2019 we still have a monopoly stranglehold company, and that you and I and every South African can't choose from whom and what kind of electricity we purchase.
Now, Phindile, I mean, the reason you have a government and the reason you have a cabinet, you know, looking at all aspects really of our lives, is because you want to make sure that no area gets neglected.
That's correct.
Now, are we then to assume that with the cabinets and the bureaucracy said on everything you've had over the past 25 years, people just slept on the job? Because when they're supposed to be vigilant, to plan ahead, you know, to be able to identify some of these problems long before they even crop up?
I wouldn't say people slept on the job. I wouldn't say private entities were blocked from the energy market. If we look back at the energy prices or electricity prices in South Africa, looking 10 years back, South African prices were not competitive, were not comparable. Any private producer who comes into the space would have a difficulty to survive and sustain at the prices we were at. Yes, the prices are now coming up. They are matching the global market. However, we have to appreciate that the fleet that we have now has sufficient capacity. We have Medupi and Kusile that just came in. That means people were not sleeping on the job.
But as we all know, they haven't done what they are supposed to do.
They haven't done what they are supposed to do.
That's on top of the fact that they were actually, not only up to standard, but enormous amounts of money went to where they was not supposed to go.
I can safely tell you that the Medupi and Kusile designs are world class. It's unfortunate that now we are faced with environmental issues, which I will not get into for now, but Medupi and Kusile need a space. If you start a company, we have done a study which was done by Dr. Vince Mikali. If he shows you the numbers of where power plants start in terms of capacity, you cannot start up there. They all, globally, we have the numbers, start at the bottom in terms of availability, and you move up. Very soon they will exponentially reach what is expected. It's unfortunate that they came a few years later than they were supposed to.
Do you agree?
I'm afraid I have to completely disagree. We now know that Medupi and Kusile weren't actually required. What happened was there wasn't enough money in the ANC slush fund, and they commissioned the building of Medupi and Kusile. And I'm afraid that I disagree that people have said that they are world-class power stations. In fact, the Minister of Public Enterprises himself has said that the building has been substandard, the projects weren't correctly designed. We see design faults in the boilers. We know that 2 of the boilers are currently running at the moment at a very dangerous level because there are possible leaks. These are just fundamental problems. The whole structure of how Medupi and Kusile were commissioned was so flawed that there was actually a penalty that was awarded against Hitachi getting the boiler contract, because Hitachi had a deal with Chancellor House, which was the investment wing of the ANC, and there have been penalties that have been paid on these particular issues. So Medupi and Kusile have set our country's economy back by about 10 years in terms of what we could have done with that money, and that's why the Democratic Alliance is asking of the ANC to immediately put a stop to any further money being pumped into Medupi or Kusile, so that we can concentrate the money that we do have left in maintaining the power stations that are currently working.
I'm assuming that the reason you're here is because you and probably a group of people within the ANC have sort of sat and looked at all the problems currently confronting Eskom and that have brought about the crisis that we are in now. So 2 things I want to ask, and if I could get direct answers, please. One is, do you disagree with the Minister and with Public Enterprises and Eskom that Medupi and Kusile aren't really up to the standard, weren't built to the standards that they were supposed to? And secondly, have you at any point sat and looked at your own complicity in actually compromising both Medupi and Kusile?
I wouldn't want to get into the details of what is wrong at Medupi and Kusile. Yes, the minister is correct. We have some substandard work at Medupi which we are working on, or Eskom is working on, and I can safely tell you that up to so far there is no problem that is picked up that cannot be sorted out. I'm not sure what was your second question.
It was whether, as the ANC, you sort of sat back and said, we are also complicit because we were beneficiaries of what went wrong, because some of the money actually went to your coffers.
Vuyo, you are entering a space which I would say if anybody has benefited from these projects, then the legal processes should kick in. I cannot enter into that in such an interview. If anyone is found to benefit.
So as the group of people who are seized with this matter and are looking at possible solutions, you haven't really gone into, that's like sacred.
It's not
a sacred area that you're not...
It's not sacred as such, but it is a matter of let's leave it to the hands of the legal people.
Okay, we're going to take a quick ad break. We'll continue with our panel discussion when Newsnight continues in a moment. Stay with us.